Hey, everybody. This is Virginia Milner coming to you for the DeKalb County Library system, and I have another tutorial for you. I'm going to use a component that we used in a pair of earrings earlier on in the year. It was a cone shape, and I had been determined to bring that back again. I saw that as a link on YouTube from Four Girls Jewelry, and I've just loved it ever since and wanted to bring it back and kind of tweak it and do it in my own kind of way. Most of it is really the way they did it, and I've just added some beads. It's very, very minimalistic as far as what you need. You basically need wire and beads. In my case, I'm using 20 gauge wire and I'm using 6mm rounds. That's it. So you're going to need your usual tools. You're going to need your round nose pliers. They are round, the barrels are round all the way around. They start wider at the bottom and work up to a narrow tip. Yes. Then we're going to use some square nose pliers. It can get a little confusing because they are slightly rounded on the outside, but if you look on the inside, it's completely flat. When you're purchasing this, either online or in the store, make sure it doesn't have those teeth on the inside, those little grips or ridges on the inside, because that will damage your wire. The third thing that you're going to need is a pair of cutters. I'm using these flush cutters. Any kind of wire cutters will be perfectly fine. The wire that we're working with is very soft, so any kind of wire cutters or jewelry cutters that you can use is fine for this project. The last thing that you're going to need is a ruler to measure everything out. And let's go ahead and get down here to the mat and get started. Okay, for my little cone shape, we're going to need 13 inches of wire. Just like that. So what we're going to do is grab our round nose pliers. Just slide the wire down just slightly from the tip, just a very, very small amount. I would say it's maybe no more than 1/16 of an inch. And you can see where it is on my pliers here. Just about a 1/16 of an inch. You need just a little bit of space at the top because we're going to be winding down and then spiraling back up. All right, so I've got my wire in between my pliers. I want to make sure that the tip is not sticking out, and I'm going to start rotating. So I'm going to give it a little turn, open my pliers up, rotate back, turn again, and notice I'm keeping my fingers very, very close to my pliers so I can make sure that the loop that I make is nice and tight. So there's the start. I'm just going to keep winding and coiling down the length of my pliers. So just keep coiling. I want to keep these coils as close together as possible, so just take your time. There's no rush here. This is a very therapeutic little action because you really, well, I guess you could rush or you could go faster than this, but you run the risk of, see, I just got a little gap in there. I don't want any gaps. So I'm going to go back, take that apart and move it forward again until it's right beside the coil that I made previously. And notice again how I'm keeping my fingers very, very close to my pliers. My thumb is right here on top, my forefinger is on the bottom, and I'm keeping it nice and close so that I have a nice tight coil. Just going down the pliers, starting to get off kilter again, just scoot it back up there so that the wraps are as close together as possible. Just keep a good eye on it, then you don't have to worry about it. The coils being separated and have to fix them later. And I know, it's boring to watch me do this for 3 minutes or however long it takes. See, I've got a little gap there. Let's go back, open that back up and scoot it over till it's tight again. Keep going. And yes, I know it is kind of boring to watch me just spiral and coil and coil and coil and coil, but the end will be worth, come on, get over there. The end result will be worth the time it takes me to do it, or time it takes you to watch me do it. And you want to make sure that your coils are going straight across, not at an angle. You want them nice and straight as you can be, as you can get them. Going down. And it really depends on how long you want your cone to be. You could stop here and have a cone. That would be perfectly fine. I'm going further down because I want it to match the others that I've already done. The only criteria that I need here, if I'm going all the way down my pliers, is to make sure that I stop when I have 3 inches of uncoiled wire left, because I'm going to be spiraling back up the coil to put a little design on it. And I need about 3 inches to do that for the length of coil that I'm making. So I just keep an eye on it. Make sure I'm not going too far away from the 3 inches that I need to have left so that I don't have to uncoil anything. Almost there. Where's my ruler? Let's check it out real quick. Yeah, a few more turns. See what I got. A few more. And we keep putting it down backwards. Okay, almost, I think. One more turn should do it. That's a little separated. Let's scoot that up. And see what I have. A little less than 3 inches, so let's uncurl that one a little bit. There we go. 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches of uncoiled wire. So now I've got my coil. Yay, neat. Before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and pinch this little tip in because I don't want it sticking out. It isn't too much, but if in case it is, just go ahead and pinch it right here at the top with your square pliers, just a tad, so that it's near the center. You don't want it all the way in the middle, but I just don't want it sticking out on the side here. So there we go. Good. So I'm going to go back into my coil with my pliers. And I'm going to spiral this bare wire that's not coiled back up to the top of my coil. So I'm just going to start bringing it up at an angle. There we go. And just work that up. Until I have a nice spiral up the length of my cone, all the way to the top. You can do it as many times as you want. You can spread that out more, but you can do as many times as your wire will allow until you get to the top. Then when I get to the top here, I'm going to wind it right around the top of my coil. That's why you needed that little extra space at the top and on your pliers so that you could wind that around. And then I'm going to go ahead and squeeze that down a little bit because it's too short for my fingers. And then cut the rest off. So now I have a little curve at the top. Take my pliers, my cutters, cut that tip off. I like to use my little spool as a receptacle for when I cut something off. You can see all those little pieces of wire down in there. I like them to have little friends, not feel like they're all alone. I make up stupid things. Anyway, then I'll take my little tip and I will push it towards the rest of the wraps so that it's not sticking out. Nice and tidy. And there's my little cone. Isn't that neat? Nice. And now what do we do with that? Well, we're gonna add a bead. Yay. So for that, I'm getting a little 6mm bead. Isn't that pretty? Yes. So now I just need a piece of wire in order to string through here and to attach my bead. So what you want to do is check the length of your cone and then add an inch on each side of your cone. And that will tell you how much you need. For me, my cone is about 3/4 of an inch, and I need an inch on each side, so about 2 3/4. I'm just going to give myself 3 inches, and then I don't have to worry about it. But you want to make sure you have a good inch on each side because you want to be able to have enough for your loop and your wrap. So yeah, there's about an inch. I was eyeballing it, and yes, that is correct. Okay. So that comes out to be about 3 inches. Look at that, 3 inches. Let's cut that off. And slide. Maybe, actually, I don't need to do that yet. I'm going to measure an inch from the tip. I'm going to put a bend in my wire at that inch. Grab my round nose pliers and slide this 1 inch side into my pliers right in between the pliers here. And I'm going to make a loop. So I'm going to bring this over the top of my pliers and down the side until it's running parallel. Oh, I'm off camera. I'm going to do that again. So I really want you to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to open that up. Open that up. And if for any reason you ever have to do this, just use your pliers to straighten it out. There. So put my little bend in again, 1 inch from the tip. Grab my round nose pliers, slide my wire down. I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way down my pliers, and I just count it off in thirds, just eyeballing it. I don't need too big a loop, so 1/3 is fine. I'm going to bring this short tail of wire that I have in between my pliers up and over across my pliers and down the side until it's running parallel with the long wire. Then I'm going to hold on to all my wires, reposition my pliers out of my way, and I'm going to bring that short tail under my pliers and out to the side, like so. And now I have a loop. There's my little loop, and I can wrap it. So I'm going to take my square pliers and right at the bottom of my loop, I'm going to wrap this short tail around, and I use the pliers as a guide. Just right on top of the pliers is where I wrap. And if you can see that your loop is too big, sometimes it's such a short piece of wire, it might be too hard to pull tight around this stem. Just use your other pliers to grasp it and pull it nice and snug. And you can use those pliers to wrap around if you want to, or you can go back to your fingers, pliers, whichever works best for you. Neither is wrong or better than the other. It's just your own personal preference. As long as you get the job done. Let's grab that. There we go. And then when I can't go any further with my pliers or my fingers, I'll just push the rest of that down with my square pliers. And then cut off what I don't need, if there's any to cut off. Oops. See if I can push that down without cutting. There. There we go. So now I'm going to put my cone on. So that's going to be the top. And slide my bead on. Bend my wire back right at the top of my bead, like so. Grab my round nose pliers. Slide my wire in between the prongs of the pliers, down again at about a third of the way down my pliers. Bring that wire over the top, down the side, and you want your loops, I'm going to take this out, you want your loops to be going in the same direction. So make sure that when you bend it over the pliers, make sure that your loops are going the same way that this is going. If for some reason it's a little off kilter, it's easy to fix. Just twist it back in place. So I'm going to put my pliers back in. Hold on to everything. Reposition my pliers out of the way. I'm going to bring that small tail under and in between my pliers and my bead. Again, if it's too hard to do with your fingers, just take your other pliers, give it a little tug, and I have a loop. Now, before I go any further, I need to attach this to my next link, which is this one I've already done. So I'm going to go ahead, before I close that up, I'm going to slide the tail of the open loop into the closed loop. And there we go. Then I'm going to grab my pliers again, your square ones or your round ones. Sometimes it's easier to use the round ones to get in between the two loops because this one's right beside it. And I'm going to wrap that short tail between my pliers and the bead. And again, I'm going to grab my other pliers to help me get that around there, because this is a very short tail. Okay. And once I can't go any further with 2 pliers, I'm going to use my flat pliers to push down that last little bit. There we go. And there we have it. That's most of my bracelet. Now we need a clasp. What you want to do is make sure you measure and see how much you need, how many of these you need. I needed 5. You may need more than that. I'm going to give you a couple extra beads because everybody's arms aren't created equal. Maybe you'll have some left over and you can make a pair of earrings. Ooh, wouldn't that be nice? But what you want to do is make several cones and put them together and then measure. I would start with 3 or 4 and then measure, because if you do 5 or 6 and then you have too many, then you have to cut it apart. And that's always heartbreaking. So I know I need 7.5, between 7.5 and 7 3/4 inches. And we are going to make a clasp that I know is about, I'm not going to show it to you because it's a surprise, is a good inch. And this is about 6 3/4 inches. So that's going to be just fine for me because I don't like my bracelets to be too loose. So this is about 6 3/4 inches. My clasp is going to be another inch, which will give me about 7 3/4 inches. So yay, that's it. So let's move on to the clasp. I love it when I have scraps of wire that I can use, which I do now. So what I'm going to need for my clasp is 6 inches. I mean, it's a long scrap, but I love being able to use what I have on hand. Now, see how this is bent up? I think I was using them for a kit that never got used. So see how that's bent? All you have to do is take your fingers and just run it along the wire to straighten it. There are straighteners out there that you can use specifically for that purpose, but why buy something when you don't need it? We're about to mangle this anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. But this also helps to warm the wire, and warming the wire helps harden the wire. So that's always a good thing too. So what I'm going to need for my clasp is 6 inches of wire, which we have right here. There we go. Cut that off. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure 1.5 inches from one end, 1.5 inches. I'm going to take my square pliers at the very, very tip. I'm going to put a sharp right angle bend in there, nice and sharp. Then I'm going to finish it by pushing that short edge down to meet the long side. Then I'm going to go back to my square pliers and I'm going to squeeze those 2 wires together, those 2 sides, as close as I can get. Trying not to cross these over. So you want to hold on to that nice and tight and squeeze them. Now, some people do it this way, but I always find that I end up with a little divot in there if I do. So I go long ways. And again, crossing over. Straighten, straighten, straighten. There we go. And that's pretty close. Just want to get it as close as you can because this is going to be your hook. Okay. So then I'm going to take my square pliers. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch from the tip here, this little tip right here. Measure 1/2 inch. Put my pliers in there. First of all, let me get this all straightened out. 1/2 inch. Here we go. And I'm going to bend this little tip straight up. Just like that. So now that's what I have. I have my 2 ends and my short tail of wire bended straight up. Now I'm going to hold on to those 2 ends and I'm going to wrap this short tail around the long stem. Now notice how I've gone back towards the back of my pliers because this is where I get the best grip. If I try to do it over here, it's going to move around. But if I move it back, it doesn't move as much. So now I'm going to wrap this short tail around this stem and I want a nice tight wrap. So I'm going to follow my pliers right there on top. And again, I want it nice and close. So I may need to come in with my other pliers to guide it around. Okay, and I'm going to make my wraps going up the stem. So the first one is nice and close to my pliers. The next one is beside it. Take your time, not a rush. And then when I can't really use my pliers anymore to wrap, I'm going to use my other pliers to push that around. And you only need a couple of wraps. Okay, let's push that tip down against that long stem. So there's my little wrap. And this is going to, in a minute or two, be made into my book. But before I do that, I'm going to put my bead on, because this is going to be a beaded clasp. I just like them. Okay. Slide that on. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Measure 1.5 inches from the tip. Actually, it's going to be 3 inches. This should be about 3 inches. So I'm going to measure 1.5 inches from the tip. Put another nice sharp bend in. I'm measuring again. It's 1.5 inches from the bead. A little bit more. That's pretty good. Put a bend in, nice sharp bend. Just like I did on the other side. And push that down. And then use my square pliers. Straighten that out a little bit. Yeah. Use my little square pliers to squeeze that tip together. Now, you're going to have a little challenge because there's beads down here trying to fight you, but just hold on to the 2 wires. Squeeze that tip together nice and slow. There we go. And then we're going to go down here to the bottom. hold on to my 2 wires. Go down here and make sure there's maybe 1/16 of an inch of space to wrap, just like on this side. Doesn't need to be much, just a little bit. And you should have at least 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of wire in order to wrap. Lift that up, straight up. Just like we did on the other side. Scoot that down so that it's near the back of my pliers so I have good grip. And wrap the wire between my pliers and my bead, just like I did on the other side. Get over there. Just wrap that around. Can't wrap it anymore. I go to the push motion. And it is a bit of a challenge on this side because now you've got the bead to contend with. And if you try to hold on to the bead, it's going to rotate. So work this out in the manner that works best for you. I do multiple things. I'll hold on to my little 2 ends of wire and push. And depending on the kind of bead that you're using, you want to be very careful because you don't want to accidentally, if you're using a bicone or something, you don't want to accidentally crack the top of your bead while you're trying to work this around that stem. So just be extra careful. Okay, so there are my 2 ends. Let's get them nicely straightened out. There we go. Same on the other side. Okay, so these are my 2 ends, and these are going to end up being my hooks. We are doing a 2-sided hook. I like those because that means it doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed. You can hook it on either side, whichever side works best. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do, I like to make sure that I like my tip to be underneath my hook if I can. But inevitably, one of these ends up being on one side, and the other ends up being on the other side. Oh, well, no, it's pretty good. Not too bad. So what I'm going to do first is right here at the top of your wrap, I'm going to put a bend. I'm going to bend the wire up. So I'm going to hold on to the wrap with my thumb because I don't want it to bend down here. I want it to bend up above the wrap. So I hold on to the wrap with my thumb, put a sharp right angle bend in my wire, just like that. So these are my 2 ends, got a little bend. Then I'm going to go to the tip. I'm going to do the same thing just at the tip, the very tip. And I'm going to use the tip of my pliers as close as I can get to the end and put a little tweak in it, just like this. Boop. Just like that, just a little tweak. So this is what I have now. Give it a little more of a tweak. There. So that's what I have so far. Then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and a little more than halfway down from the tip, I'm going to place my pliers. So there's just a little bit more on this side than there is on the side where the bead is. Then I'm going to, and you can see it's right here near the back of my pliers. Right here at the biggest part of my pliers. Then I'm going to bring the two ends together. Just going to fold them over until the tip touches just above the bead. Just like that. And there's my little hook. Ta-da! Yay! Straighten it out if it needs to be straightened. This one's pretty good. Not too bad at all. Let's get the little straightened out. Just back on there. Push that down. And there's my little hook on one side. So let's go to the other side, and this one is going to go in the opposite direction. So again, I'm going to go right here above my wrap, bend my wire back. Same down here at the tip. Give it a little tweak. Just like that. A little bit more, just a little more. There. And if you need to, you can see where my wire's a little wonky here. So let's just straighten it out. Here we go. I have my round nose pliers just beyond the halfway point. I'm going to slide that wire back to the back of my pliers just before I get to the squared off part. And I'm going to fold the top and the bottom together. Here we go. And then do whatever straightening I need to do. I can see where this one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to push it down a little bit so it's a little closer to the size of the other one. Little adjustment. And I need them to be opposite of each other. So I'm going to twist until they are. So there's my little hook. Make any adjustments that you need to make. I'm going to squeeze that a little closer to the bead, a little tighter. And there's my hook. Yay. One on one side, one on the other side. Push this one down a little bit more. Yes. Now, all I need to do is attach it. And because it's a two-sided hook, it's its own separate piece. So you don't have to worry about whether you're right-handed or left-handed. There it is. There is my bracelet. Let me try it on. All right, there it is. There's my cone bracelet. Yay! I've been meaning to do this forever. Well, at least since I made the earrings. There's my little clasp. There's my little bracelet. Nice. Isn't that neat? I love it. I love using lots of wire and then just finishing it off with a little bit of beadwork. You look at this forever. Okay, anyway, there is my bracelet. There it is, all finished. There it is. That's it. It's telling me to wrap it up. Okay, there it is. There is my bracelet. I am loving it. Isn't that neat? And all it is a series of cones and some beads strategically placed. And of course, we have our beaded clasp, which I always love. I like a continuation of my pattern. Okay, so that is our piece for today. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope that you'll make one. I hope you'll also get in contact with me and let me know what you thought of this. My email is jewelrygen20@gmail.com. That's JEWELRYGIN20@gmail.com. You can leave comments and pictures on the library Facebook page, which is facebook.com/DeKalb library. That's facebook.com/DEKALB library. You can also leave comments on the library YouTube page, which is youtube.com/DeKalb County Public Library. That's DEKALBCOUNTYPUBLICLIBRARY. I always like to spell that out because you have to use the entire thing because somebody else has DeKalb Library. So get in contact with me, please. I would love to hear from you one way or the other. And I really, really appreciate any constructive criticism that you can give me. Lighting is not always great because I don't have ring lights and all those lovely things. I do the best I can with my ceiling light and my side light and my big window over there. And I hope for the best. I hope it all comes out okay. And I hope that you can see everything that I'm doing. But please let me know what you like, what you didn't like. I listen to everything and I try to incorporate it into my future tutorials. If I went off camera, which I do know I did at least once, let me know about that too. Just shame, shame, shame on me. But I would love to hear from you. So please, please feel free. And until next time, have a great week. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you later. Bye-bye.